In this video, I'm going to tell you how you can land yourself on stage on your first speaking engagement, even if you're literally scared to death of it and don't know where to start. Let's get right to it. If this is your first time here, my name's Don Felker. I'm an independent software developer and consultant / freelancer in the United States. And on this channel, I teach you how to start, survive, and thrive in the world of freelancing and consulting. And today we're gonna be talking about how you can get on stage. It's probably one of the best things that you can do for your career, in my opinion, simply because it just puts you out there in front of everybody and exposes you to a whole bunch of opportunities that would have never really been there before. However, when starting out, it's really hard to figure out how do you get your first speaking engagement. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. Now there's a number of ways to go about this. So what I'm gonna talk about first here is gonna be the types of speaking engagements you can have. And these are gonna be the locations of the speaking engagement. So let's hop right into those. Now I like to call these speaking engagement venues. So you just call them speaking venues for that matter. And I'm talking about 6 of them. Now a couple of them do slightly overlap, but number one, most likely when you start getting into the desire to want to speak on stage, you're probably thinking, I wanna go speak at this conference. And it's usually a very large conference that many people around the world are familiar with. It's probably a conference you've seen someone speak at, perhaps you've even been to. I would love to do that, but I have no idea how to even get on that stage. And those are gonna be international conferences, and they're gonna be the most popular ones. They're industry level. Everyone in your industry knows about them. There's news about them. And these are usually gonna be fairly large speaking engagements that you're going after. And these venues are kind of difficult to get to. So that's gonna be the number one you're thinking about. However, that's not gonna be the best place for you to start, simply because that is akin to being a rock star in a garage and thinking, you know what, I've just started a band and I want to be a rock star in an arena presenting and playing in front of 5,000 people. That's just not going to happen. You have to start smaller. So we're going to kind of rewind backwards on how you can do that. So number one is going to be the international speaking engagement, the international venues, etc. All right, the number two is going to be regional conferences. And regional conferences are interesting because they are very narrowed in on a regional area. To give you a perfect example, I used to live in the Midwest in Minneapolis for a number of years, and I spoke at a regional conference in the middle of the Midwest, and basically smack dab in the middle of the United States in Nebraska. And there was a regional conference, and I think it still goes on, and in this regional conference attracted a lot of people from the surrounding states. And everybody knew about that conference. It was a very popular conference. It was a yearly event for a lot of people, and they really enjoyed going there. And this was something that was considered important to the regional area. However, if you were to step out of that regional area and go to somewhere like California or over to New Jersey, where I am, no one would have ever heard of that conference or is even familiar with. Now that doesn't mean that it's not important or it's not even a very big conference. It just means it's regional. So in this case, it was just the Midwest of the United States. So it's gonna be number two is a regional conference. Not as big as a large international industry level conference, but it's still a conference in which is gonna have good attendance, usually put together fairly well and run by a professional organization. And you have some good speakers and you have a great time there as well and be open to a whole bunch of networking opportunities. All right, now number 3 and number 4 are very related to each other, but I think there's just enough of a difference to separate them. And number 3 is going to be user groups. Now, if you're like me, you are a technical individual. I'm a software developer. You might be someone who's a different type of engineer, but I'm going to assume you're in software. If you're a software developer, there are user groups, and this does happen outside of software with design and video editing and stuff like that too. And these user groups are going to be usually technology specific. There might be a Java user group or an Android user group, or if you're in design, there might be an InDesign user group or a Photoshop user group. And these user groups are usually volunteer run. Someone is just interested in bringing all of the advocates of that platform together to kind of sit around and just share tips and tricks and just collaborate together and grow the community and network. But they're always looking for people to speak, because when you run one of these events, which I did for a number of years in the Midwest in Minneapolis, eventually you personally run out of things to talk about and you want to bring other people in to kind of share their knowledge and kind of grow that community all around. And so those user groups are going to be all over. You can just hop onto Google and search for a user group in your local area. It could be Java user group, .NET user group. What's going to happen is this is going to kind of cross the boundaries a little bit over into what is number 4, Meetups. Number 3 and number 4 are very related. In the technology space, I've decided to separate user groups simply because they've been around for so long that it's still a very common thing in many cities to have just user groups that are related to specific technologies. However, there are now meetups that might be even more generalized or specialized, and they do kind of overlap quite a bit. When you find meetups, of course, you're probably going to find them on meetup.com. Again, these are going to be things like an Android meetup. It's going to be perhaps a video editor meetup. It's going to be software design pattern meetup, little local area entrepreneur meetup. And these meetups are going to be usually more generalized. However, they do have a particular focus. A lot of times it might be web development meetup. It might be a particular no code meetup or something like that. So it's very maybe technology focused, but the options are much more wider. Now, number 3, which is user groups, and number 4, which are meetups, are related simply because the group of people is going to be much smaller. In these 2 types of venues, what you're going to find is it's anywhere from a couple of people, 2 to 4 individuals, upwards of perhaps 20 to 60 people. And on the high end, if you're in cities like London, New York, and stuff like that, you might run into user groups or meetups that are in 200 to 200 range, if not a little bit more. So those can end up being fairly large. However, for the most part, I would say on the average, you're going to be running anywhere from 10 to 30 individuals at a local meetup. And these meetups are nice because it's very quaint, and the user groups as well are all very quaint. They're very tight knit. The community knows each other. Usually you probably know some of these people just from either A, working with them, or B, seeing them around at local regional conferences or even online in your local area. This is a great opportunity to grow your local network simply because these meetups usually happen every month usually, or every other month, and it's going to be local to that environment in which you live. So if you live in somewhere like New York City, it's usually just going to be New York City folks that are showing up. Of course, the surrounding areas. Minneapolis, it's going to be anyone in the Minneapolis area. Las Vegas, Nevada, it's going to be people from Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, of course, there's always going to be people that kind of come and go from out of town just because they're in town, but it's not going to be like a regional or a international large industry conference where people are flying in to watch you speak, though sometimes that rarely does happen. These are fantastic opportunities to speak simply because it's very low pressure for you. Okay, so the next one, number 5, in your office. If you work in an office, which a lot of us do, you probably have coworkers that are working on your team, and maybe you've learned something new. What you can do is turn that into a presentation, and then at that point in time, teach the individuals on your team about whatever you've learned about and educate them. This can be actually a stepping stone from moving at an office environment into meetups and user groups where you can refine the presentation even more, and then perhaps even to regional or international conferences as you get more experience. These are fantastic opportunities in your local office. You might be thinking, well, I don't have time. When am I going to have time to have an hour presentation for my teammates? Ask your boss. Most likely they're going to be okay with it. You're providing basically free training. However, if you want to make it fun and enjoyable, what you can do is buy your team pizza. Spend a few dollars, buy some pizza, and have a lunch and learn. And I've done this countless times at many different clients. And in fact, this is a humongous tip and trick that you can use at your clients to really boost your value, is just do lunch and learns. Create a presentation. It can be 30, 40 minutes long, and teach a topic while you have bought and served pizza to people there. People will show up. There's free food. They're going to sit there and watch, and then they're going to learn and see you as the expert. So fantastic opportunity to start really local, especially within your peer group. Low pressure. You're not going to have to be worrying about answering questions from people you don't know and fielding stuff like that. Okay, last one, number 6. This is going to be online. This could be even a international, regional user group meetup, even in your office. So online could span all of these. But the reason why I put it at the end is because when you're online, you're not looking at a wide array of people in front of you who are staring at you. You don't see 80 eyeballs staring at you. You don't see people nodding. You don't see the person 2 rows back sleeping. You don't see the person over there eating a bag of potato chips making a bunch of noise. You don't have the person trying to challenge you with all kinds of questions. When you're online, usually it's in front of your computer, in your home environment, home office, or wherever you're at, which is basically you're looking at the webcam. And it's a much different experience. In fact, it's actually quite difficult because it's hard to read the crowd. After you're used to speaking in front of a crowd of people, you can read the crowd and know how to kind of react. When you're speaking directly to the camera live, it's kind of hard to understand if things are resonating or not resonating because you can't see people on the screen. Now, of course, you might have Zoom up on another screen so you can kind of watch in that regard, but still, it's just very hard because people are very easily distracted in an online environment. However, they are very useful. And so there are 2 ways to do online training events. One is live. That's going to be just popping open the video, maybe perhaps doing a Zoom, and then just presenting and going with it. The other option, which will allow you to be much more polished, is to pre-record it and edit in some type of editing software and then put it online, which you could put it online like this video here onto YouTube. So that provides you a couple of options. The nice thing about the online opportunity is if it's recorded, people can replay it at their own will. And especially if you've taken the time to produce it properly, edit it, and put it on a place like YouTube or some video sharing site, people can then discover the file or the video and replay it and save it and watch it over and over and over, which could give you a ton of exposure in other areas. All right, so which one do I recommend? Let's cover all 6 of them again. So number 1, we have international industry conferences. Number 2, regional conferences. Number 3, we have user groups. Number 4, we have meetups. Number 5, in-office presentations. And number 6, we have online presentations. So if I had to choose any, which would I recommend? Well, my advice is going to be a little biased because this is the route that I went. And I would still personally recommend that you start at number 3 or 4. Go to a local user group or go to a meetup. These are going to be in-person events. It's going to take you out of your comfort zone. You're going to feel the pressure of having to speak in front of people that you don't know. However, it's not going to be completely overwhelming where you're speaking at a conference where you've been advertised as a speaker. There's 50 to 200-300 people in the room looking at you, expecting to be wowed by your presentation. Most likely someone has paid many hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, for a ticket to get into this conference. But with user groups and meetups, these events are often free, maybe $5 or $10 just to reserve space if it's in a big city like New York. It's very low pressure. You can actually get in there and feel the pressure is a lot less. You'll still put a lot of pressure on yourself because you don't know anyone in that environment and you'll be a little nerve-wracking. However, it's going to be a fantastic place for you to grow. It's going to give you the best of both worlds. You'll be able to present, refine your presentation skills, as well as get experience as a speaker from end to end, from starting the presentation, developing it, and getting it out there. Furthermore, with user groups and meetups, these events are often promoted by the user group organizers. So they're going to be promoted to like-minded individuals in the local industry that you're working within. Some friends, possibly family, might even show up to provide you support and push and help you along throughout this journey, which is always a benefit to have people there to support you. And then where do you go from there? How often should you do it? Typically, I recommend if you want to get into speaking and you want to do it at a high level, start speaking 4 times a year. That's going to be once a quarter. If you can do more than 4 times a year, then do it. The more you can do it, the better you're going to get. If you find yourself with a very busy lifestyle, if you can get in once a quarter, so once every 3 months, into a different user group, into a different community, you're going to find yourself growing still quite substantially. Do that for a while, then start applying to different regional conferences. If you want to move up into the higher level, have a couple of talks that you've already developed. This could be 1, 2, 3 talks. I recommend having 3 different talks that you maybe can develop to have ready when you do submit the proposals to a regional or a large industry conference, simply because the conference organizers might decide, well, we don't like the first 2 ideas that Don sent over, but we like the 3rd one, and they might choose that one. Now, you may not have that conference talk developed yet, but you have the abstract and what it's going to be about. And if they choose it, then you might need to go create it, and that is what it is. But that would be what I recommend. Now, also, as an ancillary topic here, I recommend that you take the time to also develop online content as well. Start recording some videos and just putting them online just so you can get more exposure and practice teaching people in front of a camera. Now, I know that's a lot there to cover, but that's going to be the best way that you can actually get started in speaking with your first speaking engagement, looking to local user groups and meetups. And the real main reason why is these individuals that run these types of events are looking for people to present. They're hungry for people to present. So it's going to be much easier for you to land a speaking engagement versus applying to a regional or international industry conference. At those larger conferences, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people submitting proposals, and the chances of getting accepted are much lower than versus a local user group or local meetup. You're going to get much more experience and you'll learn a lot more in a local meetup, and then eventually you can upgrade and then try to move on to the larger events. And I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please reply in the comments below and I'll do best to reply to them as soon as possible, and I'll catch you in the next video.